reference a book. It's called Decolonizing the Mind by Ngugi wa Thiong'o. He's from Kenya and initially wrote under the name James wa Thiong'o because, like so many people, to go to school required you to take on a name by the colonizer. Now we willingly do it. I see, people across the continent with children's names Sheila and Kelly and Grace and Mercedes and all that. And I said, what happened to our indigenous names? But this is what he says in this book. He says, but the biggest weapon wielded and actually daily unleashed by imperialism against the collective defiance is the cultural bomb. The effect of a cultural bomb is to annihilate a people's belief in their names, in their languages, in their environment, in their heritage of struggle, in their unity, in their capacity, and ultimately in themselves. It makes them see their past as one wasteland of non-achievement, and it makes them want to distance themselves from that wasteland. So how do we turn this around? How do we turn this around? Because when you were telling me that you think in your mother's tongue, and then in your head, you're translated into English, there are times when, even though I studied here in the United States, I am thinking in a different language, and then I'm trying to find the words in English, which somebody might say, oh, does she not know what she's talking about? No, I'm trying to make this connection. But what I'm seeing now are Africans who don't speak any African language at all. And certainly for those of us who are out here in the diaspora, many of us are not teaching our children the languages, and our children may actually even be resistant to learning the languages, again, because of this concept, this erroneous concept of Africa. So how do we begin to change this? And if you don't mind even going into some of the things that you're doing as an engineer who could go get a visa and go somewhere else, but you are choosing to stay in Ghana. How do we change this? What do we need to be doing differently?
All right. You see, look at the prominent and big churches in Nigeria, in Ghana. You all speak English. And as a matter of fact, they say that they are international and global churches. Now, a lot of our people are in these institutions. One of the biggest pushback, if you want, has come from these modern day denominations, where their sense of their Africanness has been so weak that they think the faith is the culture. So they have practiced their Christianity.
Please repeat that again so that people really catch that. You said their faith.
So they think that their faith is their culture. And so when they adapt the Christianity, so-called Christianity from the Europeans, now they have to wear suit and tie, speak English. Some of them even do their hair so that their hair texture will look like the European. And those people are the ones who are giving their children all these grandiose English names, And they have really, over the last 50 years, have done a lot of damages to the African heritage, African sense of identity. And it's not only in Nigeria, it's in Ghana as well. The Pentecostal charismatic. All denominations did the same. They planted the seed. The Catholics, the Basel, the Methodists, they did that the same thing because they came with the European culture. They came with the European identity. And what we don't know is that even though they came with some Bible, they came to dominate. And they really did not. That's what they came to do. And so
Desmond Tutu says, they came with the Bible, told us to close our eyes and pray. We closed our eyes and prayed. And when we opened our eyes, we had the Bible and they had the land.
Yes. And that's what they have done. And so now you have a lot of these educated people, those who say that our children don't speak the local language. It's because when you go to school, we are constantly being told to become polished and civilized. And that means that become like the colonizer. You go to church on Sundays, it's the same. Go to any small church in any village in Africa. The pastor is not so much educated by speaking English with 3 members. And then they are translating that. And so constantly there's a cultural
Wow.
annihilation. And they think, and they don't see any worth in our heritage. And at the same time, they are looking at how do we lift our people from poverty and all these situations. You cannot lift the people up until they see themselves as confident and capable and complete. And where else do they see themselves as capable and complete except in the identity? The culture, any people who are strong and able to fight and stand up is because they believe in themselves and they believe in their heritage, they believe in their language, they believe in their culture. If you cut the root of the tree is nothing. And the culture is the protection. The culture is the education system. The culture is everything that protects the people from destruction. And what we have seen is that they've been able to dissuade. That's why they attack the culture.
So
that's why the colonizers.
So what you're saying is, because there's lots of information out there about we need investors, we need foreign investors into Africa, we need more money to come into Africa to build up the infrastructure and all of that. You're saying that's not really the main thing.
No, that's not.
Change the trajectory of Africa and get back to wholeness.
That's right. See, Africa does not need investors to develop. Africa needs Africans who are confident and knowledgeable in their African heritage to stand up, because the resources are here. Africa does not need money from anywhere. It's because they told us that we're not enough. That's all. That's why any young man in Nigeria, in Ghana, if they get this kind of information, you don't give them any capital to start, they will start and jump and build something. Go back 10 years, they have built an industry. Because everywhere that you plant anything, it germinates. You go anywhere, you can have water. There are people everywhere. These are the resources. The only problem is the mental processes, the conditioning, the information that we have. We live in wealth. They don't live in wealth. That's why they were looking for investors. We live. So the language that Africa needs investment is a lie. Africa needs confident, proud, courageous Africans to just lift what they have and build. So we will wait forever when our minds are on people should come from somewhere to come and develop us. That's a strategy. It's not true. To come and save us. It's not so much the truth. Yeah. And that's what we do with our programs, many of our radio programs, and we actually do them in P. We don't do them in English. I do English. Even in China, when I started, I was speaking English. Then we switched to the language, because I think the very things that we need to open the minds of our people should not be in English.
I agree.
It should be in the language that our people understand.
I agree.
Yes, and now we teach finance, we teach business, we teach thought processes, we teach personal development, the importance of our history, identity in our language. And I can tell you that young men in villages, in towns, there are so many of our people who have come from abroad to stay and live in Ghana now, because now they see themselves as a different people. And so you can't change a people's life until they start to see themselves differently. And the information to make sure that they are confident, because all that you need is courage and knowledge to build. And that knowledge or that courage will never come if they don't know who they are, they don't know their history. And so that's all the African needs. Once the African gets that, they can look back, because their eyes will start to open. So I've heard so many people, scholars, to say that, listen, there was this man in England, and somebody showed him some of our videos. He said, now I see myself as a human being. I've never seen myself like that before. Wow. A lot of our people weep within. They question, even if they are human beings. I tell you, based on the information that we have and the European hegemony that we live in, many Africans, without this knowledge, don't see themselves as human beings. And that was the design. The design was that you will never see yourself as a full human being. Mm-hmm. And many of our people, without this information, don't see themselves as full human beings. They even think that God cursed us.
Well, let me share this quote from a mentor of mine. He's now an ancestor, John Henry Clark. And he said this: my main point here is that if you are the child of God and God is a part of you, then in your imagination, God is supposed to look like you. And when you accept a picture of the deity assigned to you by another people, you become the spiritual prisoners of that other people.
Absolutely. Don't you see that confusion everywhere? Especially on the continent. People in suit and tie lifting their hands to God to come and change their finances for them.
What? No, sir. Giving their finances to the church. Giving their finances, the little they have to the church.
Yes.
And then saying, but God, you will bless and multiply this.
That's right. And yes.
While the pastor drives off in his latest car or buys another jet plane.
Yes. Because you can only do that to a people who don't know themselves. So they are not able to question the very system that's enslaving them.
So how do I know you're doing things, and I'm so glad, and somebody else is going to hear this and also do this in other countries as well. And for those of you who are listening, who are in the diaspora, all of this still pertains. How are you being mentally enslaved where you are? And what are the ways to reconnect to your identity? To remember, Ayikwa Ama has a book called Remembering the Dismembered Continent. And his whole goal with all of his books, as I've read them, is to get African people, wherever we are in the world, to reconnect to our memory of who we are and not who we have now been told that we are. So there are people who are going to watch this who are going to say, yes, I have some knowledge and I need to start offering this to others in our language. I know that in the school that we've adopted in Opobo, we are hiring an Ibani teacher. We've already been doing Ibani lessons in the library that we started, because Ibani is the language of the people there that was going extinct because we weren't speaking it. And so we're reintroducing it, and we're saying we want to start at the nursery and elementary levels, because there is power in language. There's power in words. When you talked about going to school and we're learning about scientists and philosophers who don't look like us, we actually have philosophy embedded in our language.
That's right.
But and many of our philosophies, our proverbs, if you will, I know that when I try to translate them from an indigenous language to English, they don't make a lot of sense.
A lot of sense.
If I say, so in Igbo, if I say "Anabana hill to Lensin," also, if I try to translate that to English, it's like you can't. I'm trying to do the translation in my head now. Literal translation would be, you can't outrun your buttocks. And someone will look at me and say, what is that? What does that mean? But in our language, when I hear it, I understand the meaning, which is wherever you go, there you are. You cannot outrun, you cannot run past who you are. You've got to work on you first, because no matter where you go to,
you will show up.
You will you will meet yourself there.
That's right.
But when you don't speak the language, you miss out on our own philosophies, our own ways of being. When we talk about, in Kenya, you talk about Ubuntu, and you talk about because of you are, I am. It's a different way of seeing the world. There's another saying, if the hawk perches, if the dove perches, and the one that says the other one shouldn't perch, let their wing break. The idea that we should work together, that there should be unity. But it's so hard to translate those kind of things in English. And so as I look at the continent, and I think we're at a really pivotal place, there are books being written about Africa being China's second continent. We're constantly looking outside of ourselves. What are some practical things that someone who's listening now, if they're on the continent, what are some practical things they can start doing to help us reshape our minds? If they're outside of the continent, what are some practical things that they can start doing?
Some of the things that I've learned, obviously as engineering student, the history was absent.
Yes.
Even those who were studying history were studying, Greek history. Aristotle.
Isn't that crazy? When I went to school in Nigeria, we read more Shakespeare than we read indigenous Nigerian
Yes.
or African writers.
Yes, it's because the education is still colonial. And so I would say that in the now that we have technology, so especially, I think there's a lot that has changed since 2020. And it's because of the spread of social media. You know, so whatever that we have, whatever that we know, now there's a tool, at least, for us to just let whatever we know out. There are African historians like Dr. Henry Clark that you mentioned, or Dr. Kwame Nkrumah's books, or Dr. Molefi Asante. All these great minds, their books are now on YouTube, on the internet. Let's get them. Nobody will teach us that history. The history that they are teaching us cannot free us. That history will make sure that we continue to be servants and slaves. The history that will free us is the history that the Africans who love Africa have written. And that history, I think, once you get them, and you don't have to master, just let us start to teach. Because many of our people, independent of their professional level of education, don't know. And you can see those in our choices. So we have prominent people in politics, in religion, in everywhere, in science labs, who are asking questions. Where is the solution for Africa? The solution is in us repairing the minds of our people. And that will come from our little knowledge that we have about history. So any little that you know, make sure that you teach somebody.
So start with the history and teach someone the history.
Yes, teach. Yes, learn it yourself. Read. Just take time, maybe 30 minutes every week. African history beyond slavery and colonization. You'll be shocked. You'll be shocked how much you know, because those kind of knowledge, we live in them. We just not put them. I mean, they are not in constructive form, but we all know them, and we are all asking these questions. What is wrong? What is wrong? That's why there's this carpenter who follows what we do. And now he's reading history books, and he calls me to show me what he has found.
Wow.
He's a carpenter.
Wow.
He's not a graduate.
Wow.
So every one of us, once we can read and write, and it doesn't have to even be in English, any other African language, just teach, learn. So this young man listens to us, and he teaches what we learn, what we teach. In Tamale, that's the northern part of Ghana, in the Dagwani, which is the Dagomba language. You know, so every one of us, wherever we are, whether it's Swahili, because it's the same problem for almost everyone, all of us.
It is.
And it's not only Africans on the continent. It's in Jamaica. It's in America. It's in Brazil. Everywhere. Yes. The history that will empower us, they have deliberately questioned that. And so many of our people don't think that we ever did anything. And the moment you start to find out, you start to put the lines together. You see that, no, these people have tricked us. And you will now see that probably you are enslaving for no good cause for them. And so if you're a doctor, you start to think twice. You start to say that, no, then I have to go back and do something for my people. I think that the moment anybody gets this kind of knowledge, you become sober. You become humane. You start to connect with who you really are. And when you come, you will be selfless and not lift yourself above us. Yes. Any African who lifts himself above the other Africans and tells us that the standard is the American standard, is the British standard, is an African who does not know who he is. Once you know who you are, you start to see the wisdom in our culture, in our language, in our heritage, and you start to see the need to learn. Sometimes I tell the Africans that you don't come here to say that I'm coming to help Africa. Africa does not need your help.
I'm so glad that you said that. I've talked to quite a few Africans here in the United States who, and when I say Africans, I'm saying anyone who is of African descent who are planning to repatriate, to go back to Africa. And I say, but you know what? Don't come with the same mindsets that some people came with when they moved back to Liberia, where it's because of your proximity to whiteness, you feel like you have something, you're better than the indigenous people, and you're going to come and save them. You're going to come and help them. Actually, Africa has a whole lot to teach the world, and it's constantly doing so, even though we don't get the credit.
That's right. And so once you come to say, I'm coming to learn, you will learn. As a matter of fact, you come to feed. You go to your mother to feed. You know, of course, there will be something that you will do, but you do it with some kind of sobriety.
Yes.
Not with arrogance.
Yes.
And not with and everything that we do, if you come without the history and the consciousness, you see, there's the difference between the culture and the consciousness. The consciousness is where you are equipped with data beyond what the colonizers have pushed on us. As in, that's why somebody who's schooled in America, for instance, will come to Ghana and say that, you know, I know in America this is it, and they're always talking like that, as if the other one who went to school here does not know much. And of course, the other one who went to school here, if he's not equipped, will still, you know, lower themselves and look up to this other. Meanwhile, you have lived here, you have things that have worked. There's something that you know that the other person coming does not know. So when I go to another environment, I don't go there to teach them. I go there to learn. But unfortunately, the colonization will make you come here and say that even though you have not stayed here and learned anything, but you have the master key to bring solutions. And that's why you see a lot of these IMF and UN, all these organizations trying to say that we want to go and help the Africans to structure the economy. 50 years, you have not been able to do it because you can't do it. It takes the knowledge on the ground to bring the solutions. You know, so once you come with respect and trust and love and dignity, then we can work together. But if you come to say that I know everything, and you don't know how to, that's why many people come here to do business and they go back. Because they think that we don't know anything. And they think that the standard should be one way. It should be the American standard. It should be the Canadian standard. No. So once you pay attention to the wisdom that we have here, you will know that, listen, if the kind of mechanisms that they have put on the way of Africa, if those mechanisms were not there, Africa will develop. Africa's problem is not.
Can you please say more? Can you please say more about that? Yes.
Yes, it's not corrupt leadership. Look at America, for instance. If Africa, let's say, switch it. If Africa, you know, had FBI, CIA, these embassies all over, with their military,
with the military bases all across Africa.
That's it. If those things were in America, you think America will move? If they haven't had over 300 years of free labor and free intelligence. So if you switch it on Africa, you'll be patient. We have our challenges, no doubt about that. But if you really, really lift the load, Africa will just grow. So it's not
but they are not going to willingly lift that load.
That's right. So that's why
they're not going to willingly lift that load. And something else, I believe it was John Henry Clark, or maybe it was Malcolm X who would say this, is a people that will give their children to their oppressors to educate are not a very smart people. And that's essentially what we do. I was just talking to a friend who was thinking, she lives on the continent, and she wants to bring her preteen children and put them in a boarding school here in the U.S. And I said, I can't tell you what to do, but if you ask me my opinion, please do not do that to your children. They are going to come into an environment that is going to make them feel that they're less than. And it doesn't matter if they get all the A's in the world and acquire all this other knowledge. If they are infected with an anti-Black virus, it will cripple them for life.
Yeah.
So leave them where they are. Let them grow and train up where they are. I went to secondary school in Nigeria, and when I came here, I was actually further ahead than most of my American peers because there was a level of excellence that was required of me by my African teachers. When I came to this country, they did not expect me to be smart. They did not expect me to excel. Yes. And I actually had to fight through that. But if I did not have the grounding that I had in my humanity and in my ability to excel, that I was an intelligent person, it would have been fairly easy into their notion of who I am and what I'm capable of. Yeah.
It's true. And you know that a lot of these parents don't have this kind of level of intelligence or level of information.
Yes.
So they just think that the child will come here and be a medical doctor and that's enough. No. You can't even actually live your fulfillment and peace without this kind of information. And so that's why you can see prominent Africans in America, in all these countries, when they speak, you can see that they are miserable within, in spite of all the professional success that they've achieved. They're not proud of where they come from.
And we've built little. We work for others.
Yeah, you see? And so the information is so key. And we have to find a way to make sure that
so you were making the distinction between consciousness and culture, and I interrupted
yes.
you. I apologize.
All right. So the consciousness is built on your sense of history, the depth of your history, so that you can know that your philosophers will not be Greeks. Your philosophers will be the Africans before the Greeks. Mm-hmm. And the very examples that you say in science and management, in every other field, in law, you will see that you look for the Africans and their wisdom.
Yes.
Those will be your reference point. You can compare with others, yes, but you will not speak only from their world. Yes. You speak from your world as well, because the Chinese man is speaking from his world. Yes. The prominent, proud, confident Chinese diplomat is speaking with that level of intelligence. Yes. Pick the other African who has not studied anything, and the words that will come from their mouth will be, they will quote all these other great but non-Africans, because the consciousness is not there, even though it's educated. The culture is really who we are, the beauty, and we cannot build until we understand the culture of our people and way of life. But the culture, just as you can pick any young man in Ghana and he knows a certain level of Ghanaian culture, but for him to get the consciousness, that will mean that he has to intentionally go and study the history.
So when you talk about studying the history, are there any particular books that you would recommend to anyone who's watching or listening to us right now?
Yes. There is a History of Africa by Molefi, Professor Molefi Asante. I think it's a great book. Yes. All of us should get it and read it. Mm-hmm. All of us. The ones that I have read, there is a let me see, Chancellor Williams' book.
Chancellor Williams, The Destruction of the Black Civilization. Yes.
And there's another one that I read. There is this preacher in America that I read his book, Race, Religion, and Racism. Frederick Casey Price.
Okay. Haven't heard of him, but I will look that up. That's why we do this.
Intense study on race, on racism, and on religion. We should study it. Okay. There are other books, my friend. Obi is The Rebirth of the African Consciousness. He's a young Nigerian. Obi Ayo, his book is very intense. It's a good book. There are so many other books that. But
yes, I often point people to. I'm looking at one. Looking at a couple now. Pre-Colonial Africa. By Sheikh Anta Diop. If you definitely want to go study Sheikh Anta Diop, anything by Ayikwe Ama. I would definitely recommend. There's another book that I have here with me by Chinwezu, Decolonizing the African Mind.
That's right.
And since you kept mentioning Molefi Asante, I'd actually pulled this off my shelf. This is called The African Intellectual Heritage, a book of sources. And Molefi Kete Asante is one of the
that's right,
the authors on this as well.
Yes, he's a great man. And a lot of their videos on YouTube, even if they don't like reading, they should just go to YouTube. Dr. Ronoko
Rashidi, Dr. Ben Yohakunin, John Henry Clark. Yes.
Yeah. I think those are the information that we should have had.
Yes. Yes.
We should have had when we were growing up. And we didn't. And so it's not complex. It's not so. Just watch one or two, listen to one or two. You will see that there's so much that they have hidden from you that you don't know. The Asantes in 1900 said that they were not going to allow the colonizers to educate their children. Asante fought all this while from the 16th or 17th century up to the 19th or the 20th century. 1900, they said no.
And I have to apologize. We only have a few minutes, but I have to apologize that my people, under the leadership of King Jaja of Opobo, were actually convinced to go and fight with the British against the Ashantis. So
Yes.
my apologies, but this is where that lack of consciousness and that division comes into play. Now, of course, after they helped the British defeat the Ashantis, it turns around that King Jaja became a thorn in their flesh because he was striving for independence, did not want to use middlemen who were siphoning off quote unquote profits. And so they ended up kidnapping him from Opobo, taking him to Ghana. They had their own courtroom with just their own judges and their own lawyers. They found him guilty and they deported him. And he ended up dying. He was taken to the Caribbean, and on his way back, supposedly, he died. There's also, some people argue he was poisoned before he could come back. So I apologize for the role that my people played.
It's not only your people. Before they could overcome, they brought some from almost everywhere.
Yes, they did.
And then even some other Ghanaian, tribes.
Yes.
All had to come together to make sure that. And I was listening to somebody talk, a British man talk, and the way they speak their history. That's why the African must learn their history. They will always speak as if slavery and colonization didn't contribute to anything that they have become.
Exactly.
That is so disheartening. They
so
trivialize the impact.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I was going to say we only have a few minutes left, and I have to ask you these two questions, if you could answer them quickly. One is, so what gives you hope for Africa's future? Given the issues, the lack of consciousness that is so rampant, unfortunately, across the continent, what gives you hope?
What gives me hope is that we have a young generation, and it took them 400 and something years to do what they did, and they continue to do. The good thing is that we are being enlightened, and our population is still, on the good side. So give us 50, 100 years. A lot of us will come up. You will not just get 1, 2, 3 committed, intelligent Africans. You get millions, and that will spark what we are looking for. They will not everything that has beginning has an end. It will not be forever. And so that's why we have to look. And so if you are short-sighted, we say that there's no hope. But if you think beyond 50, 100 years, you see that it will be a whole different thing.
Thank you for that.
If you look at London now, it's changing. Look at New York. It's changing. Can you add 50, 100 years to it?
Yeah.
There are more people with our skin color than there are more with the colonizers. They're just about 5-10% of the world's population. And
they are only 10% of the world's population. Yes.
That's right. And so in 100, 200 years, it will not be the same.
And we need to hold on to that. Yes. So one last question for you. For those of you here in the U.S., here's a book that I'm going to offer you. It's called Lies My Teacher Told Me, Everything Your American History Textbook Got Wrong. There's a reason why they're banning books in the United States of America. They don't want you to know the real history, because then you can be controlled in a certain way. So, sir, I always ask all my guests this question. If you can answer it in about 30 to 45 seconds, that would be great. How do you define freedom?
Freedom is who you are. It's who you are. It's being who you are, expressing your greatness. Without it, you can't live to your fullest potential. So freedom is actually something that you have to become. It's a desire. Wow. And it's the definition of worth. That's freedom.
Freedom is the definition of wealth. Thank you so much. I know this has been an enriching time for all of you, because it has been for me. I'm going to go back and listen to this. I'm so glad we are connected. I will be watching your channel. I want to thank all of our listeners and all of our viewers. Please like, subscribe, share the channel. Please go visit his channel as well. Support the great work that he's doing, and go pick up a book and read. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for being with us today. Thank you, sir, for being our guest today.
Thank you, Aya. Thank you. Thank you.